Happy Hunger Games is literally the title of this slide because that is what we were faced with. So making a physical product post-COVID is harder still than making one regularly. So this list here is just, I'm gonna like pop a tear. It was so hard. You guys remember though, the lead times were chaotic, the estimates were unreliable. How many phone calls did you make where you got an estimate for something? And I'm not talking about PPE because that was bananas. Just your regular products that you use to run your business. And you got to estimate, you got a delivery date, and that changed. And then it changed again, and then it changed again, right? And then the customers who were responding to that, they were sitting at home, everybody was remodeling their kitchen, and everybody was remodeling their bathroom, and everybody was getting divorced. Like, those are what people were doing. So if you weren't in those three particular verticals, we didn't know what was going on. So it was a tough time. And the thing that was working in 2019 before the pandemic started wouldn't necessarily work, obviously, through the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, we just had no idea if every time we nailed something, how long it was going to work and was it going to keep working, right? So the way that you run a business is you do, certainly the marketing section of the business, you're doing multi-channel marketing, it's integrated, and you throw a bunch of stuff out there, you do some A to B testing, and the thing that works, you put all your money and time behind that. Right? So that model didn't even work. So it wasn't just that what you were doing, but the process with which you were trying to determine what to do was broken also.
I can give one great example there. So we were supposed to have a batch made in July, that became August, became September, started downhill on the side, and then we got the batch here, and it was just beat to hell. I mean, it was pounded. And what we figured out was that the packaging protocols from before COVID were fine, because before then, FedEx guys on the tarmac were taking their time loading stuff, and now they were just throwing stuff up
like
there.
Just kicking it.
They were understaffed, they were underpaid, they didn't have PPE where they were, and the entire batch was so damaged that we weren't able to sell any of them. Now, we got lucky, those 150 test units, but even something as simple as I paid a lot of money to ship this here, it probably shouldn't look like it gets thrown off the back of a truck. Went out the window, and we had to completely rebuild our shipping protocol, on the fly, just to get stuff safely shipped here, and that's one tiny part of moving physical product. So how we handled it. So strategy, cost, supply, and team are the four fundamental silos we focused on. First, we heavily invested in inventory to ensure continuity of supply. That was the biggest thing we encountered. Normally, in kind of a pre-COVID world, you want to be as lean as possible, right? We've all learned about lean inventory management, Six Sigma, and have as little in the system as possible. That broke down during COVID. Not saying it was right or wrong before, it just doesn't work during COVID. So we had to place a bet on ourselves and say, you know what, we're going to buy in on this inventory, and it's terrifying. I remember wiring that money and just shutting my laptop off and walking outside, so if that money doesn't come back, that's it, we're done. But it was a bet on us, and it worked. Because we were able to pay our suppliers, they were able to dedicate time and attention to us. They were able to go out and buy the batches they needed. They had the funding and financing they needed. We took the risk away from them, and they were able to perform for us. Second, we reduced headcount, and we created employee owners out of the team. Reducing headcount was hard. It's one of the worst things anyone who runs a team has to do. It's also a conversation that has to be had, because if the team's not going to succeed on its mission, you're not doing anyone any favors keeping those people on payroll. So we did it early. We made sure we had time to pay them plenty of severance to land on their feet. We helped them find other work, and then we took them off the team. And then we made everyone who was left employee owners. We invested heavily in their equity to make sure that everyone had a voice and everyone felt like they owned part of the company. And it's such a weird thing, because you don't think with supply chain that's a big part of this. But Connor, my head of operations in the back, is responsible for everything that moves through my business. I don't want him not feeling like he owns part of the company, as he's handling everything that moves through my business. So it's thinking through that, especially in an aspect of the business that, let's be honest, gets overlooked a little because it's boring when we talk about cost savings. It's not that great. Making sure people are engaged was critical. We engaged with some outsourcing help, especially for Amazon management. Actually, Amazon closest right there. And then we reassigned personnel to China operations for 4 full months. We took our head of R&D completely off of R&D. We stopped R&D. And we said we need the help on the ground in the factory. He didn't know anything about China operations. Didn't know anything about operations.
No, he
He had
didn't.
to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
Fortunately for us too, he's fully bilingual. He's from China originally, so it was an incredible resource to have. But we had to completely stop doing one thing in our business to make something else succeed. And normally, if you told a product company to stop R&D, that's pitchforks and torches. And then finally, investing in a quality team. We spent a lot, and we can talk a lot about what we did time-wise and effort-wise to get there, but we have 3,000 units a week being produced with 0.5% defect rate. And we had our first 0.0% defect batch a couple weeks ago. So it's working for us. We placed a bet on it. Now we're in the sales side to figure out the challenge, but we bet on ourselves and it worked from a supply chain perspective. Everything there is not something you did pre-COVID. You accepted standard error rates. You kept team equity low because you wanted to have all of it. You had a big team to keep some flex in the system, and you did not bulk up on inventory at all. My supply chain professors would have kicked me out of class in 2012 for saying, hey, let's bulk up on inventory. But those are the changes that had to happen to make this work.
And I cannot speak highly enough about having direct conversations with your employees about ownership. It was huge. And it was so different. I was surprised because it was so different for every person who worked for us. The things that mattered to them and the things that moved the needle in terms of their ability. People are in different situations in their lives, but it was great conversations and it made all the difference, and it just helped us really cement a core team that's exceptional. I can also not speak highly enough about the partnerships in town. So I spoke a little bit about Kavu, our Scrum buddies. They have an incredible training program that they put forward. They do it on the individual level all the way up to the larger B2B level. And we were able and because I was in software development before, I was familiar with Scrum and Agile, but I'll tell you that as a marketer and as a creative person, we don't like to be boxed in. We don't like to talk about processes or doing things in a certain way. And the only thing I like about Scrum now is that you can choose different color sticky notes when you're doing your Scrum design, right? So I'm like, we're at least getting the rainbow sticky notes if we're gonna frickin' do this. So, but it changed the way that our team worked. And really I can't speak high enough, it's the Tower of Babel example, right? We were all speaking different languages, we were all working from different, marketing versus ops, and we would take time to figure out, like, we're talking about the same thing. And we would be in Slack going, we're saying the same thing. Like, let's just stop this thread, we're saying the same thing. And so working with and getting trained up with this partner really allowed us to all get on the same page. We became so much more efficient, and they now still tease me about how much I hate/love Scrum and how much they're like, because they're ops guys, right? So like, come on, this is the best. And so, but it was.
I'll tell you the funny story there. We were using Scrum-ish principles for the R&D back when things were better and we had more money and time, like we all did, and we got really far. We developed Spruce on a pretty lean budget. We cut our R&D cycle in half, worked great. I started fundraising summer 2021. Fundraising and doing things at the same time. If you've ever done that, I'm sorry, I know how you felt. It was awful, and we stopped doing Scrum. And that's when the errors started accumulating. That's when we stopped noticing the little and big things that we could have caught up front, like the packaging, like the quality controls. And so that's what we had to use to rebuild starting in September. So from September to late November, we're doing the daily stand-ups, backlogs, increment management, the works. That's what worked for us. That's one of those tools. I don't think that's a surprise pre-COVID. Everyone here knows what Scrum is and what Agile is. I think post-COVID, especially with how volatile the current environment is, it's a have-to-have. I'm happy for you if it's working another way. It doesn't work another way for us.
And the thing about Cabo in particular, one, they're local, so we were super happy to support them. But two, their mission to get women and people of color into the Scrum environment and into the training environment is something that we also believe in very strongly. And so we are aligned in values with this particular company. Their product is amazing, and it really changed the way that we work. All right, this was me. So, like I said, when it came to marketing, you want to do my marketing slide? You should do it. When it came to how you market something like this, everything that you think you know about marketing is wrong now and broken, and I don't think it's ever going to go back. And the reason is because consumer behavior has changed so dramatically, and it continues to change, and it's changing faster than it ever has before. The only time in history when this has happened have been when there have been huge technology advancements. So what just happened recently with iOS 14 coming out and with COVID, it has just changed how we market. And so when I started, I'm like, oh, I got all these plans and I've done this with brands and different products, and so I'm just gonna knock this out, no problem. And then nothing that we did worked. We couldn't get our B2C pipeline moving fast enough, and it was so frustrating because we were working with Amazon. People weren't buying what they were supposed to. None of the data that we had told a story that made sense to us. And it was the first time in my career that my precious Salesforce or whatever, marketing system you're using, where my precious data wasn't helping me out and wasn't telling me what to do. So we did an initial pivot because B2C wasn't going fast enough. We early on did a pivot to B2B almost exclusively. So our B2C environment is a billboard, and when we're at meetings with people, and we were in meetings with Alabama Power, and she goes, one of the directors pulled up our Amazon store and goes, "Oh, you guys are on Amazon." And we're like, "Yes, we're on Amazon, but we also are telling you about this other cool stuff that we do." But being on Amazon was a big deal, and that was a value driver for that particular B2B sale. So I'm telling you that B2C is important, but it's serving more as a billboard now because of supply chain than it really ever has before. So we made that big shift. We leveraged our personal networks like I have never imagined. I really appreciate. Do you guys do Girl Scout cookies back in the day, or if you've ever sold wallpaper or wrapping paper for your kids' school? Like, that was us as a professional business with our product. And so all of you in this room who have been called, everyone in our networks, thank you so much for responding or not being rude when you didn't respond. It has been such an adventure. But I will tell you that Birmingham shows up for Birmingham, and that's been incredible. Atlanta, we've been in other cities and all over the world. We have distribution partners across the pond, and that's been incredible, but we've just been so grateful for how Birmingham has shown up in particular. So we did a very non-traditional drive time radio ad investment in our marketing. And I know you're laughing like, drive time radio? What are you, like 107? Yes. I felt 107.
It was super fun to pay for, by the way. I'm like, oh god.
Listen, I have not written. It was. I have not written a radio ad like in a really long time, and I'm like, I don't even know if I can do this anymore. And then the folks at the radio were like, we don't even know. We're mostly digital. This is a new and different space for us. So going word of mouth, going back to old school, doing drive time is the way that we really managed it. Key events was also a huge thing. Talking to Tech Birmingham, they were like, "Will you please come and talk? It's our first one, and we want to do something relevant and cool and amazing." And so this event is a great example. All the way back to CES in January, we invested a lot of money and a lot of risk in our personal health. There, so many Clorox wipes, so many masks. And we did a great job. 4 of us went, and 5 of us went? How many were there? 4 went, and 2 got COVID. So, and we didn't get it. We washed our hands. But it was incredible. And CES actually, the event, they were so smart. They closed down a day early, so everybody before they popped positive for COVID could get on the planes and go home because they didn't want to be a super spreader event, right? Which is gross, but whatever. They're good. But at CES, we were one of the only. There were a couple of companies that had lines around the booth. All the big guys were there, the cameras and the cars, and that was really cool. But they didn't have chips for their cars, and they didn't have materials for their cameras. And so they would come up to us and say, "Oh, this is a cool idea. Are you thinking 18 to 24 months?" We're like, "No, we have 3,000 of these to sell today. So how do you get that going?" And we just became super popular and so excited. And people came over and said, "You can get what they have today." And so that was our first real encouragement that our strategy, our supply chain strategy.
Two quick notes on that from a supply chain perspective too. One, on the B2C front, keeping in mind who's downstream of you matters a lot. Amazon's downstream of us. The U.S. federal government can't make Amazon do anything. I cannot make Amazon change. So if they want to keep the return window open 18 months, that's what's happening. Same for FedEx, USPS, UPS. We're dependent on day-to-day delivery for B2C stuff. That was all stopping, slowing down. If you saw the news, someone threw FedEx truck into a ditch here at some point last year. All that stuff is downstream of us and had to be adjusted around. And while it's easy for us to laugh about and joke about, it had to be managed or we were going to connect with customers. Second, I was going to say just trust. I mean, when you look at that list of what changed, Amazon is the most trusted B2C platform in the world. It's independent of us. I can't do anything about the reviews. Old school, drive time radio ads, word of mouth. Your friend tells you it's awesome, that's better than any ad. Everything that was trust-based was sticking. Everything that was pay-to-play, paid ads, paid placements, stuff like that was falling apart. And I think you see that in supply chain anytime the market gets shook up is people revert back to trust. And the sooner you recognize what that source of trust is in your supply chain, the better.
And so we had to really double down on earned media, and it was particularly difficult. Earned media is always like the kind of, golden ticket in marketing to get and do, and it's great. But people would say, do you want to report how many people at your company have COVID? We're like, no. Have there been any tragedies? No. Is anything bad happening? No. We're like, we have a good story to tell. Like our shit's working. Like we want to tell that story. And the media wasn't interested in it because they were focused on the pandemic, what was happening, and we knew that it was going to be like a 6 to 10 month lead time before the good news stories started coming out. So we were kind of alone, quietly rocking it and being amazing with no one to tell our story. So it was really challenging. A list of final takeaways.
So
Go ahead.
in classic Scrum style, we didn't want to set anything out that was absolute. There's a lot of old tactics and strategies that work and will work again. Right now, flexibility is better than using whatever worked before. It just is, because things are changing. None of us in here work in any kind of environment where stuff is the same. I heard Ben talking earlier with high tech. Recruiting is an old industry, and everything is upside down right now in the talent market. It's just one easy example. Lifetime value is more important than right now value, and that's really scary. It's scary right now to invest in stuff like this and not think about this moment, next 3 months, the next 6 months. You've got to be thinking down the road. When we made our quality choices, that was money we did not have to spend. Those are big bets we placed, but they had to happen, and all the partnerships we're securing right now are because of that quality choice. Favoring systems over chains. A chain implies this kind of next step, except that it all feeds back. If we end up making a marketing pivot with what's going on for that New York Times article, our entire supply chain is going to have to react to that. So it's a system that works together. More than ever, teams are more important than heroes. Everyone has that hero moment in their job. Something has to get done. Of course that happens. But that shouldn't be happening a lot. During crises and moments of change, you see that happen a lot. And really doubling down on your team and making sure that the team is there to help as much as possible. It's fantastic. And with the remote environment, it opens up a whole world of possibilities for who can be on your team and talent on your team. A community is, being a community is more important than being a lone wolf. In venture land, people create this image of someone who's just off on their own in a garage, curing cancer or inventing Facebook or whatever. That was never true. It's really not true now, and it's really not true in Birmingham. Just where we are, who we are, what the culture is here, we're better as a community. And then finally, investing in buying local, Christina's talked about a lot, is better than investing in buying global. And it's not just from a social good perspective, it is a social good, buy from us please. But also, you have a partner down the street. You're not chasing someone on WeChat using Google Translate to go back and forth between English and Russian and Chinese. You can just walk over there and say what's going on. They can just carry stuff over and help you. You can sit down and shake hands with somebody who you're going to be doing business with for a long time. That all adds together to what we see as how we actually hack the supply chain. Staying flexible, focusing on lifetime value, really looking at systems, building a team, engaging with community, and then investing and buying locally.
Cannot stress that enough. So thank you guys very much for having us. That is our talk.